match for both of them here as they're looking to qualify for the Players' Championship here in Season 2. Joe Lossett, number 3, Gerard Fabiano, number 6. And shortly here we will begin play with a Scalding Tarn here for Lossett. See what basic he wants to get. It will be a basic island. Was unsure if maybe he wanted to grab a non-basic, but there's a Sensei's Divining Top. We'll see if Fabiano has a counter spell for this. It does look like he has a Force of Will in hand.
And this is a very important card to fight over. In a long game, Sensei's Divining Top is the most powerful card in Joe's deck. And even though this pains Gerard to do it, he hates casting Force of Will. He hates 2 for 1ing himself. You got to fight over this.
Do you think he hates removing recoil to the Force of Will?
Hey, we were arguing about recoil versus Maelstrom Pulse the other day.
We were.
Could not remove Maelstrom Pulse to Force of Will.
You make a very good point. Must mean that Force of Will is just, that recoil is just the better card.
Yeah. A foil recoil, which you probably got at a draft at the only game in town 15 years ago.
Very nice. Just been holding it the entire time.
Yeah, I probably lost to that very recoil in the draft.
A couple of fetch lands here for Fabiano in Misty Rainforest. Lossett has a Arid Mesa out there, so both players hitting their land drops thus far. Gerard with a card like Disfigure in his hand, not going to be very good in this matchup.
Well, fortunately for him, he has, of course, 4 copies of Brainstorm in his deck and the ability to shuffle stuff away. So I think for Gerard, he's going to be holding on to his fetch lands as long as he realistically can and try to eventually shuffle that Disfigure away.
Fabiano going to sacrifice both of his fetch lands. He's down to 17.
And, you know, for a Miracles deck, Disfigure is not the end of the world for Gerard. There are several targets, Snapcaster Mage, Vendilion Click, Venser. Joe is playing a creature-heavy build, so Disfigure is not what Gerard wants, but it may end up being productive in this matchup.
Here is a Tarmogoyf. That's a pretty big one to start. Going to be a 3/4, and does resolve. Joe draws the Mountain.
So if I call your name, please
He'll deploy the Mountain.
let me know you're here, else you'll get dropped.
And you see his mana right now is a little awkward.
This is what I alluded to with the Cavern of Souls opportunity cost before we got into the match. This deck, Miracles, does not have great mana. Mana's okay, but you get into spots like this, and Cavern of Souls can exacerbate that in certain spots.
Here's a Brainstorm for Fabiano. He'll draw 3 and put 2 back, of course.
Carl Harden.
Gerard also on a light counterbalance package of his own, not as extreme as Joe's, but playing 2 copies of Sensei's Divining Top and 2 copies of Counterbalance.
Here's a Thoughtseize. Looking to get an idea of what Lossett is working with. You see the Swords of Plowshares over there. He's going to sacrifice the Arid Mesa. Might be a basic Plains, might be a Tundra. We'll see.
And this is the reason I like the matchup from Gerard's side of the table. If Joe gets Sensei's Divining Top into play, I think he's got a pretty big edge on Gerard. But without that card, I think Gerard's deck just plays the threat-answer game a lot more efficiently than Joe's does.
All right, thank you guys.
There is the sword to take care of the Tarmogoyf in response to Thoughtseize. I think I do agree with you overall. I mean, if Joe has top, it's night and day.
Exactly. And Gerard, with one of his 2 copies of Force of Will, was able to fight over it on the first turn. And now Joe's deck runs much less efficiently than Gerard's.
Tarmogoyf is exiled. Gerard will gain a little bit of life, of course. We'll see if this Thoughtseize resolves now. It will Counterspell, Counterbalance, and Terminus. See what Fabiano wants to take care of with the discard spell.
If Gerard has an answer to the Counterbalance, he's probably taking Counterspell. And if he doesn't, he takes Counterbalance.
That seems to be the case, as he takes Counterspell. Lossett draws an island. This will allow him to deploy the Counterbalance, and he will. Pass the turn back over to Fabiano, who will draw. Looks like Fabiano actually just picked up a copy of Abrupt Decay.
The bane of Joe Lossett's existence.
Makes his life a little bit more difficult.
Yep. And Joe has certainly done well in tournaments in spite of Abrupt Decay, but it's probably the most unpleasant card for him to play against Game 1.
Lossett draws another copy of Counterbalance, so he'll deploy that as well. See if Fabiano has anything for this.
This is a way for Joe to potentially tax Gerard's Abrupt Decays. He simply draws more Counterbalances than Gerard has Abrupt Decays.
Yeah, it can be annoying, that's for sure. Fabiano's got some thinking to do now, because he had the first Counterbalance handled with that Abrupt Decay in hand. Now the second one, as Gerard's looking at a copy of Force Will, it gets a little bit annoying, but that's going to get in there. Here's Tasker. Chances of you counterbalancing that are very low.
Terminus.
It's not impossible.
I suppose Terminus would kill it anyway, so
yes.
Not a huge cost.
There's a Scalding Tarn. That's not going to do it. Lossett will draw that Scalding Tarn. Play that. pass the turn back. 1 mana away from Terminus, oddly enough.
The tall clock that says Premier IQ 5K standard.
Terminus the hard way.
Indeed, indeed.
That is our clock for the
Here
day.
comes
That'll
Tassiger.
be when your rounds end. So pay attention to that. Because we're competitive.
Now here's Sensei's Divine Top.
If you are not in
Let's
your
take a look.
seat when the round starts and you
A
have
1.
not talked to a
Top here for
tournament,
Joe. We'll take care of Gerard's
that
top.
will be a game loss.
Not only a 1, but
And
quite the
10 will
1.
be a match loss. If at that point you still want to
Joe can get to establishing the soft lock with counterbalance plus Sensei's Divine Top, but he's got to be able to beat this creature that's in play. And I have a feeling we might see Fabiano fight over this if he has a blue card in hand.
Absolutely. I mean, he cannot allow Joe to get this mixture of cards into play.
See if counterbalance is able to hit a Force of Will. That's an island. Now he's got another counterbalance trigger because there are 2 in play, so he's going to sacrifice a fetch land with the other one on the stack and see if he's able to hit a Force of Will.
So,
Joe is giving up on guaranteed land number 6 that would allow him to cast Terminus and answer this Tassiger because the upside of hitting Force of Will is so high right now that Joe's willing to roll the dice here. And even if he doesn't draw land number 6, you know, he's got some time, he's got 13 life to play with here, but he's rolling the dice a little bit here because hitting Force of Will is so good.
Dig Through Time was the reveal, which is still a pretty scary card, honestly.
Yeah, that's not a bad consolation prize.
Into a Tasker comes Fabiano. Lossett's going to go down to 9. The follow-up is a Thoughtseize. That'll take care of the Terminus in hand. Gerard knows the Ghost is clear, obviously, because Dig Through Time's on top of the deck. Pass that turn back. A card Fabiano has cast a lot in Dig Through Time. He knows just how powerful this is.
Yeah, one of Gerard's favorite cards. I mean, most of his standard decks are built entirely around Dig Through Time.
Even this deck he's playing today has
Yeah.
Dig Through Time in it. 2 copies.
A lot of one-ofs, pretty good at filling up its graveyard. It's a lot of the same recipes.
Joe will take a look at the top 7. Swords of Plowshares among them. Also a Force of Will. Caracas is actually pretty good in this situation, too.
Caracas is great.
Yeah, Tasker is a legend after all. This also land at number 6 and White Source number 2. Not a bad find as Joe looks like he's eyeing up that Caracas.
I
here.
like Caracas and Dig Through Time, I think, because Caracas is a great answer to Tassiger, and this game is settling up to be a pretty long one, so the second Dig Through Time is going to be powerful, most likely, and none of the other cards in his hand stand out to me as being really powerful. I mean, Force of Will and Swords of Plowshares are pretty good cards, but I'd rather have another source of card advantage.
Looks like he may be agreeing with you. He's got those 2 cards in his left hand, the other 5 in his right. Considering maybe Force of Will at this point. Those are going to go to the bottom. Dig Through Time is done resolving. There's the Caracas. And Tasker's going to go back to the grip right now. Caracas, not something that you really have to worry about with Tasker in Standard.
No.
This is pretty annoying. There's Sensei's Divine top. Jace the Mind Sculptor on top.
Pretty big draw there for Joe.
Yep. Dig Through Time in hand, Jace on top of the deck. Fabiano quite clearly having some mana issues this game, too.
And we know this recipe for Sultai decks, permanents that cost more than 3 mana aren't the easiest for them to get off the table for the most part. I mean, Jace on any sort of staple board is going to be potent, but particularly against Gerard's deck that is not well equipped to get it off the table once it's there.
Here's the Mind Sculptor. Fabiano not having a lot of Force Wills in his deck this particular week. I think only 2 copies.
2 and 1 in his sideboard.
Gerard, not a big Force of Will guy.
No, his decks are more about having a lot of card advantage, having a lot of broad strokes answers, and winning the grind fest. And in the non-combo matchups, that's a pretty good strategy. Unfortunately for him, Joe has pieced together a lot of powerful cards in a row. Gerard's Force of Wills are taxed fighting over Sensei's Divining Tops, and that gives Joe an opportunity to resolve some of his bigger cards as the game progresses.
Yeah, Force of Will is just kind of a necessary evil
Yep.
in Legacy. You know, I'm sure if Gerard didn't have to play it, he wouldn't. But, you know, he's playing as few as he feels, as few as possible he feels.
If you're playing 0 copies of Force of Will in a deck like this, you are essentially giving up on your combo matchup game 1.
Cavern of Souls is here. He did name a Wizard. Got ourselves a Vendilion Click now in the draw step. Joe looking to put together that powerful combination of Vendilion Click plus Caracas.
Piece of
Yep.
information you want to know for the day. We have 100.
And both the cards are so both of the cards are so innocuous too, because Caracas does all sorts of good things on its own against opposing decks. We saw it bounce a Tassiger. The Vendilion Click's just a fine Magic card in any game that isn't being determined in the first 2 turns of the game.
Yep.
And when you get them together, it can be a game plan onto its own.
The Wizard, a great name with Cavernous Souls. You got Snapcaster Mage, Vendilion Click, and Venser Shaper Savant.
Tribal deck.
Yes, it is. We should change the name from Miracles to Wizards.
Get some Patron Wizards in there.
I think we should dial back a little bit. That's a little much.
Got a stew going.
You got something going. The hand here for Gerard, an Abrupt Decay. Let's make it 2 of those. Tassiger, Disfigure, and Vendilion Click of his own. So he's got answers to the click. But Joe is coming from a lot of different angles at this point. 2 counterbalances, which means that all the spells Gerard will cast. It's unsure if they'll resolve. Jace, obviously a problem. Vendilion Click, there are answers there. So Joe just says, you can keep all those cards.
Exactly. If Gerard spends 2 turns casting Abrupt Decays on the counterbalances, Joe's going to run away with the game on the back of Jace. So he doesn't really care about those cards very much. The Disfigure is just a worse Abrupt Decay. And the 2 creatures in Gerard's hand are legendary and therefore checked by the Caracas. So no reason for Joe to touch anything in that hand.
It's also very unclear if that Disfigure is even going to resolve.
Yes. Joe might be able to manipulate his deck in such a way that there's a 1 on top, but even if that's not the case, I think that's not a card Joe's going to concern himself with.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason he didn't take it. Just move on from that. It's basically like that card's not even there. At this point, Joe can look at Gerard's hand and poke some holes in it. Say Disfigure doesn't matter. Tassiger is never going to matter now.
Right. I think the only cards Joe would touch would be something like Maelstrom Pulse, something that could get, or Pernicious Deed, something that could get a lot of cards off the table.
Maelstrom Pulse, a.k.a. the worst recoil.
Yeah, non-blue sorcery speed recoil.
Got it. Spin the top, will Fabiano. Puts his cards back very quickly. Spun that top in the upkeep. Polluted Delta is land number 3. Took him a while to get there. Fetch land 2 to clear the top if he didn't like what he saw. See if Gerard can figure out some way to break through this Jace. Typically in Legacy, when Jace is in play for 2 turns, probably don't win then.
Yep. Well, part of that is also when Jace is in play for 2 turns, it's a sign that there's something wrong on your opponent's side of the table. They're not able to attack and they're not able to kill you.
Here's a Spell Pierce. Gonna go after this dig through time. And Joe knows what's on top of his deck too, so Spell Pierce is actually gonna work. So that will draw a card. Looks like it's a copy of Counterbalance there. Jace is going to Fate Seal. The Sensei's Divine Top's going to go to the bottom. Set with Counterbalance and Snapcaster Mage in hand. We'll just pass the turn back. Fabiano going to sacrifice the Polluted Delta. Maybe work his way towards drawing that Sensei's Divine Top again with Search of Bayou out of his deck. You said it was going to be a long one, that's for sure.
I mean, Gerard's still on 3 lands here. It's turn, 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like the actual end of the game is anywhere in sight, even though Joe has built a substantial advantage for himself.
Jace is certainly getting to work. There's land forward for Fabiano. Polluted Delta. Pass the turn back. And set with that Snapcaster Mage in hand. He can make it uncounterable thanks to Cavernous Souls. Every time we see the Cavern here from Joe, we saw Cavern from a different Miracles player yesterday. It's looked impressive.
The cost is high in some matchups. If you're playing against a deck like, let's say, Temur Delver, you're probably not thrilled to have the Cavern.
Probably
you're
not.
More vulnerable to Wasteland, and you may not have double blue on the second turn. But in games like this, it is a very powerful angle of attack. Gerard doesn't have a lot of counter spells, but he certainly has some. And the creatures that Joe is bringing to the table, especially once Caracas is involved, are very, very powerful.
Fabiano going to sacrifice a fetch land. Vendilion Click he's going to try to resolve. This is in response to the Snapcaster Mage. He wants to put Tasker on the bottom of the deck. Good choice.
Yep. Needs to get his Legends out of hand in the face of Joe's Caracas.
Now Snapcaster's in. See what it targets. Looks like it's going to be dig through time. 5 plus 3 is 8. And now Joe gets to take a look at 7 and take 2 with him. Maybe. Gerard with the D's. Geez, what a beating this might be.
Gerard's gotten some very nice exchanges here with spell pierces and dazes later on in the game. Now, Joe still has Jace in play uncontested, and it's not clear if Gerard can really get to this card because his legendary creatures are shut off, and anything slow he puts on the ground like Tarmogoyf or Deathrite Shaman is liable to get bounced, but Gerard is doing a pretty impressive job of at least staving off the worst of it for the time being.
Is there at least cards that Joe has to think about moving forward? And that's part of the reason that Gerard's deck list is the way that it is. It's certainly wacky. We have it in front of us, and we talked about it yesterday when we had him on camera against Tom McRae playing Goblins. It's just, he's got 3 Deathrites, a Recoil, 1 Himatorak, 2 tops, 2 counterbalances, 2 dazes, 1 counterspell. Like, the cards are all over the place. It looks very strange on paper, but these are cards that, Joe is kind of running into now, which is part of the reason Gerard's deck is built the way it is. Disfigure's kind of floating around in here out of nowhere and all this crazy stuff. Joe's going to sacrifice Floodstrand in response to this Disfigure.
Well, it's telling that the only 4-of spell in the deck is Brainstorm, and it's sort of reductive to describe a deck as a Brainstorm deck, but that's kind of what's going on here. The selection of Brainstorm and the fact that he can shuffle away dead cards means Gerard can be pretty liberal playing with 1s and 2-ofs and 3-ofs and just assuming that when they are bad in the wrong matchup that he can just shuffle them away.
Disfigure got countered. Counterbalance is a very powerful card, to say the least. Even when there's no top in play, it's still good.
Well, for me, the real thing was the second counterbalance that Joe drew, because Gerard thought seized away a counterspell instead of a counterbalance because he had Abrupt Decay in hand. Joe top decked the second one, and then suddenly Gerard's Abrupt Decays were overwhelmed, and counterbalance has been doing some pretty serious work for Joe.
Joe getting to work here now with Vendilion Click plus Karakas. He targeted himself with that click, but a counterbalance to the bottom of the deck. Getting to work with Jace yet again, too. Don't know if there's something Fabiano can overcome. I mean, he's still playing the game out. It just seems like, to me, almost a hopeless situation. Jace has been in play for about 4 or 5 turns now, and winning a game through this is almost impossible. That's just how powerful Jace is.
And Gerard has no way to get this card off of the table without attacking, and that might be impossible at this point because Jace can turn to unsummon if Joe feels it's appropriate. Joe, also with Vendilion Click plus Karakas, has a permanent chump blocker for as long as he wants, so I just don't know if Gerard can contest the Jace at this point. It's been in play for several turns, and
Gerard tries to resolve a Brainstorm. Swords of Plowshares on top of the deck there from counterbalance. That'll counter that. Now, Lossett is going to sacrifice his Scalding Tarn because he does not want to draw the swords. No reason to. Keep moseying on along here. He's in a great spot. Looking to close out this game. And then click 1 tap. Lossett will draw a card. It's a mystery. In for 3. Fabiano's going to go down to 7. A tie game.
yep, it's close. 4 permanents to 14.
I just go by the life totals, man.
I'm just calling out the score over
That's
here.
all I can do. That's all I can. That's what I get paid to do. Brainstorm there from Jace. 2 cards go back. Lossett's land for the turn was a Flooded Strand. Now here's Sensei's Divining Top. Gerard will give that the thumbs up. Pass the turn back. Joe with a Venser in hand in case anything goes wrong at this point. Fabiano will play a Polluted Delta. Joe going to spin that top. Couple copies of Terminus. Force of Will at the very top card of the deck, so that'll be Lossett's draw for the turn. Maybe not. Going to sacrifice Flooded Strand. Joe, just an expert Miracles player.
Though I'm interested in spots like this. Is it the most important thing to be playing as perfectly and efficiently as possible? Or is it more important for Joe to just untap, attack, untap, attack? You know, by going through this cycle here, he's, going to spend a couple minutes probably topping and setting things up and shuffling his deck. And in a game, in a match that potentially can go on for a very long time, I wonder if it's just better to play at 50% accuracy, but 100% speed, rather than the other way around.
This is something Reed Duke has talked about, too. It's just, at some point, Miracles takes a long time to play, and it's very hard to play perfectly. And, you know, Joe's being very mechanical in the process right now, but at the same time, TikTok does go the clock.
Right. If you're looking, if you ignore the clock, what Joe is doing is absolutely correct.
Yes.
I just wonder if this is, if you're weighing those two things against each other, if this is an appropriate use of time.
Here's a brainstorm from Fabiano. That's by all metrics. I believe Joe's got this game locked
Yeah,
up.
Gerard's dead. You know, it's just a matter of how long is it going to take.
Brainstorm getting a counter there from Sensei's Divine Top going on top of the deck. Lossett will play Vendilion Click through the cavern. Take a look at the card. Blue to Delta. That's not going anywhere. Lossett can maybe even turn on the heat a little bit more with Venser, but he'll wait. Doesn't change the combat math at all. So here's an attack for 3. Fabiano's going to go down to 4. Lossett will redeploy the top.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are 25 minutes.
Maybe
remaining
Fate
for
Seal with the
sign-up.
Jace. He will. Take a look. Ponder. That stays on top. Pass the turn back. Fabiano will draw the Ponder. Maybe cast the Ponder. Joe will draw. Counter it. Fabiano will play the Delta. Joe will probably play the Venser. Or the Snapcaster. Maybe he wants to leave Venser a secret since Fabiano hasn't seen it yet.
Exactly. I like that.
There's an attack. Fabiano gives a thumbs up. That's going to do it. Joe Lossett's going to win game number 1 here over Gerard Fabiano. Miracles up a game over Saltai Control, which means we'll take a look at the sideboards. You've got Gerard's in front of you, so I'll let you begin things.
Naturally, 15 one-ofs.
Oh, this should take a little while.
A Disfigure, a Liliana of the Veil, Snapcaster Mage, Scavenging Ooze, Echoing Truth, Duress, Nile Spellbomb, Flusterstorm, Inquisition of Kozilek, Pernicious Deed, Force of Will, Blue Elemental Blast, Submerge, Hydroblast, Sylvan Library. So what I think Gerard wants are cards that are good in games that go on for a long time and answers to Sensei's Divining Top, because that's the most powerful card in Joe's deck for the matchup. So I think the Sylvan Library comes in. I think the Duress comes in. Inquisition may or may not. I think with Gerard on the play, it is reasonable. Snapcaster Mage is good in the long game. Liliana of the Veil is good in the long game. And it's possible he wants Nile Spellbomb because Joe is using his graveyard to good effect. And Nile Spellbomb's got a low opportunity cost.
It does cantrip after all.
I'm curious to see if if Gerard rather wants the 3rd copy of Force of Will. I think he definitely keeps in 2. On the play, Gerard has a lot of discard spells to try to strip it out of Joe's hand. But if he removes Force of Will from his deck, he's very vulnerable to Joe simply drawing and casting Sensei's Divining Top. So I'm curious to see if Gerard says this is a card advantage battle, I don't want Force of Will, or if he believes he's vulnerable enough to Sensei's Divining Top specifically that he leaves at least some copies in.
It's Static Caster, Sulfur Elemental, a Council's Judgment, a Pithing Needle, a Wear Tear, a Nethersworn Canoness, the Cavern of Souls, and Entreat the Angels, a counterspell, along with 2 Red Elemental Blast, 2 Flusterstorm, and 2 Relic of Progenitus here for Lossett. Anything stand out to you there?
2 Flusterstorms, 2 copies of Relic of Progenitus. Again, Gerard's using his graveyard to good effect too. It's a low-cost card to bring in. I think the additional Cavern of Souls, I think the additional copy of Entreat the Angels, and then there's a good chance that the Council's Judgment comes in alongside the Red Blasts.
We will see how both these great players do sideboard. Get ready for game number 2 with about 25 minutes left to go. You see Fabiano's sleeves there. They are the cat sleeves from our spring creature collection. We've also got some other ones available too.
Absolutely. All of the stuff is available on card sleeves, play mats, and dice bags. You can head over to starcitygames.com/creature collection to order your items today, or you can head over to the dealer booth at any of our opens or any Grand Prix that we're vending at.
We'll, of course, have our summer collection down the line here. That'll involve the sweet new Piglet.
Yep.
I do know that'll be on there. Not sure what else yet. We're left in the dark about these things, which makes it kind of fun.
Our July, August, and September game night kits, plus the parody creature,
Yes.
as to be determined.
But expect at least the Piglet on
Yeah.
something.
Piglet will be there for sure.
And its boots just messing around.
Mm-hmm.
Fabiano back against the Lawyer now, down a game with about 25 minutes left to go. After these players get done shuffling, you imagine we'll be around that pace. Andrew Boswell having a great tournament here. A couple other players as well, just looking to get those Open Series points. Kevin Jones having a nice tournament.
I believe all 5 of the players that we have talked about being in the mix for the Season 2 points invite all made the second day today.
They are all in day 2. Kevin Jones, Ross Merriam, Danny Jessup, Gerard Fabiano, and Joe Lossett. All in here.
Ross and Kevin at 7-2.
Yep.
These 2 players at 6-2-1, and Danny Jessup at 6-3.
Correct. We'll see if any of them can make a deep run. All in position to make top 8.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to win a lot today. Got 6 rounds of action to figure it out. These players will shuffle and present, and then we will have Fabiano on the plate here. So let's see if Gerard is happy with the 7 cards he lays out. What kind of approach he's going to take after sideboard with this funky Sultai control deck.
Well, funky does not even begin to describe
The
it.
man loves these colors, I tell you. He'll play it in all formats and be successful with it in all formats. Both players are happy. We'll start with a Tropical Island on a passing of the turn. Lossett with an island, no Sensei's Divining Top. He'll pass. Fabiano going to sacrifice a Verdant Catacombs. He's down to 19. We'll see what land he wants to search up. He'll go with an Underground Sea. Now here's a counterbalance from him.
A light counterbalance package.
Yes. 2 counterbalance, 2 Sensei's Divining Tops. A brainstorming response from Joe. And again, you know, the best thing about this is you have no idea if Joe knew this was coming or not.
Yeah. Well, he has brought in, it appears he's brought in Wear Terror.
That's just a nice little hedge. I have no idea what he's got in his deck.
Right.
You can assume maybe an artifact or enchantment in there somewhere. There's Volcanic Island. Here's an attempt at a Elemental Blast. Trigger. How do we do? Daze. Fabiano looking at his hand. Looks like he may have a Force of Will over there.
And a recoil, I think.
Oh boy.
The question here is if Gerard doesn't have Brainstorm or Divining Top in hand, how valuable is this counterbalance?
That's very true.
The answer may be not particularly, not worth a fight at this stage.
Daze the draw for Gerard. He just passes the turn back. No 3rd land to play. Was that with the Caracas here? Access to white mana. He'll pass the turn back, it seems, to Fabiano. Fabiano will draw. Picked up a copy of Thoughtseize. He'll lead out with that. The set may brainstorm in response, and it appears that he will. See if Fabiano will fight back over this. He will not. So Brainstorm's going to resolve. 3 cards coming. 2 going back, but more importantly here for Lossett, he's going to get to hide some cards from the Thoughtseize.
Yeah, gets to conceal the goodies. Could potentially set up a miracle if he wants, though, a little early in the game for that. Likely just hiding his 2 highest value cards.
It does make you wonder how many miracles he has in his deck after sideboard. Cards like Terminus don't seem all that great in this matchup.
I think it's one of those sort of things where you don't want to cut them entirely because it's just a good insurance option to have available to you, but you don't want to be loaded up on them.
Sure.
And when you're playing against Gerard, there is some, uncertainty about what he's exactly going to be doing. So I think Joe probably does a lot of hedging while he sideboards. Leaves in a little bit of stuff.
The Thoughtseize reveals Entreat the Angels, Pyroblast, Wear Terror, and some fetch lands too, a Flooded Strands and a Scalding Tarn. So it makes you wonder what Joe did hide. We'll take a look at his first draw step. Vendilion Click is 1. Remember, Joe has to worry about Daze, given that he did see it. Fabiano finally able to draw a land there in Misty Rainforest. He'll sacrifice the Misty right now. Go down to 16.
Remember, Joe is aware of the days in Gerard's hand here,
Yep.
so he's going to be extremely passive in playing his stuff. There's no way he wants that days to resolve on anything that matters.
See what Gerard wants to put together now. Does have access to Snapcaster Mage in hand. We'll go with Liliana of the Veil. That one can be rather troublesome. That's going to resolve.
Though Joe with Vendilion Click in hand may say, well, that's not the end of the world. He's at least got some way to pressure this card.
And Gerard ready to discard. He'll make Joe discard as well. And Joe will sacrifice a Scalding Tarn. Have a bit of a response here.
It's possible he's clicking Gerard here in response to the Liliana activation to get a little bit more information on what Joe wants to discard.
Yep.
You know, if he sees no targets for Wear Tear, for example, that might be the card to go.
We've got some stacked base interaction here. It is Legacy after all. Joe will discard Flooded Strand. Gerard will discard the Recoil.
Heartbroken.
Tough to watch. There's the click. Looks like Fabiano's going to use Force of Will. Removing Snapcaster Mage. Has to keep the days given the the Red Elemental Blast.
Yeah. Kind of painful to discard a Snapcaster Mage in a game that's shaping up to go on for a really long time, but I think Gerard is committed to protecting Liliana for as long as he can. Vendilion Click is incredibly disruptive to that plan, and so his hand is forced. He needs to keep the days to push it through.
Good draw there by Lossett. Copy of Council's Judgment.
Yeah, that's about perfect. And again, that innocuous Caracas showing up for Joe and shuts off so much of Gerard's threat base.
And Joe actually plays 2 copies of Caracas. It's very, very good in his deck. And it's just very good in the format. It's just so annoying.
Yeah, there's a ton of interaction in his own deck, and then there's some matchups, you know, like Reanimator, for example, that you run into where Caracas is the game plan onto its own.
Liliana Veil is going to bite the dust. So Gerard was trying to protect that and take over the game with it, but was unable, so he'll just draw a card now. Pass the turn back over to Lossett. Lossett will take a draw steps to Swords of Plowshares. Maybe a little draw go action here. There's a Duress. Swords, Wear Tear, Pyroblast. Pyroblast will be the selection. Maybe Gerard trying to clear away for a card like Jace the Mind Sculptor. Or this.
Yep.
Dig Through Time's good.
This feels like the first big play from either player in game 2.
Gerard going to remove everything but the Recoil.
It's probably his best Snapcaster target at this point. I guess arguably Duress is better, but
I think it's a point of principle. Recoil's
Right.
not going anywhere. Dig Through Time done resolving. Mr. Rainforest is the land, and we head back Lossett's way. Lossett just draws and says go.
this is the type of game that Gerard likes to play here. I think he would want to have a threat in play ideally, but all this gets undone if Joe finds Divining Top. That's the big pressure here on Gerard. For as well as all of his card advantage and stripping Joe of his resources is going, Joe top deck Sensei's Divining Top, and Gerard's attrition game plan no longer works.
Yep. Here's Liliana again. Fabiano really loaded up on the discard.
Yeah. Which is a great game plan as long as Joe does not find Sensei's Divining Top.
Yeah. Liliana taking out. Gerard's going to predictably discard the days. Lossett will discard Scalding Tarn. Let's see what he draws for the turn. Nothing of help. It's time for a Thoughtseize. 2 swords and a Wear Tear. Fabiano really getting to work on that hand.
Yep.
There goes the Wear Tear.
He's going to try to push Joe into basically a top deck mode. May go ultimate with Liliana soon. He's vulnerable to Sensei's Divining Top. He's vulnerable to Entreat the Angels off the top if he doesn't have a counterspell, but otherwise, Joe is just running out of resources to work with.
Relic of Progenitus, the draw here for Lossett. Not a bad one.
No, it's nice for Joe to have a card that he can just cast that somewhere down the line he can cash in for a card because of what Liliana is doing to his hand. What he does not want to draw right now are counterspells or other things that just sort of sit in hand. He wants to get things that he can play to the table.
Fabiano quickly going to draw a card. Liliana's going to go up to 6. Lossett will lose his last card, which was Swords. Fabiano will lose his Inquisition of Kozilek. Both players working with very few resources at this point. We'll see if Lossett wants to cash in that relic yet. There are certainly some big draws available to him. A card like Sensei's Divine Top is one, Jace the Mind Sculptor is another. But by removing the graveyards, he shuts off Dig Through Time for him and Gerard. Mountain was the draw. Off the relic, I think Sensei's Divine Top was the draw for the turn. That's a big one.
Big peel. Joe rewarded. That was card number 2. So sacking the relic there, really important.
Joe will play the mountain and spin the top. Now he gets to hide cards from the discard. Venser, Red Elemental Blast, and the Island are the cards he's looking at.
I'm looking for Andrew Jessup.
Even if Gerard goes ultimate with Liliana, if Joe can keep sub mana and the Divining Top, he can come back from this spot.
Yeah. That's just how powerful top is in this situation. Fabiano's going to tick up Liliana. He'll just have to discard a card. Verdant Catacombs. Joe's starting to roll up the sleeves. It's time to get to work now. Venser. Oof.
That was really important for Gerard to counter this.
Yes.
Because if Joe gets to Venser that Liliana and have Venser plus Caracas in play, Gerard's getting squeezed from a bunch of different directions.
We know Joe actually has access to Red Elemental Blast among those top couple of cards, so he's going to cash in here.
Yeah, and I like this.
He'll blast. He'll bounce. Now Liliana can come back and take care of Venser because Joe's tapped out. But so this isn't the end of the world.
This is not the end of the world in terms of what's happening on the board. What it is doing is giving Joe a huge cushion here to play the Sensei's Divining Top game.
Yep.
Now Liliana's at 1. Joe can operate basically empty-handed and manipulate his draws in such a way where you know, the plus effect on Liliana is very little, and Joe can still play a powerful game plan with the Divining Top.
Here's a brainstorm from Fabiano. He'll draw 3 cards, of course, put 2 back.
And if you want to look at a vulnerability of Gerard's list, if you want to look for one of the holes in the armor, there just aren't answers to Sensei's Divining Top in his list. He doesn't really get to access things like Pithing Needle or Null Rod because he has Divining Tops of his own.
Yep.
And he's not playing with cards like Crozen Grip or some of the more narrow answers available. And so the games will take up this shape a good percentage of the time where it goes on for a long time. Gerard is able to do his discard and card drawing thing. But if Joe happens to find a Divining Top, Gerard's in a lot of trouble.
Well, Gerard's got a clock now in Tarmogoyf. He's going to take up Liliana, lose Vendilion Click. I suppose there's a Crocus on the other side of the table, so that makes sense. And the Goyf is pretty big. Looks like a creature, an instant and a land. So 3/4. Joe going to spin the top. Look at 2 islands and a mystery card. Mystery card stays on top of the deck. Another Sensei's Divining Top here for Joe. He'll draw a card. He's having a grand old time here.
Just having a blast performing game actions.
Yep. Relic now. That'll contain the Tarmogoyf.
Not only does this contain the Tarmogoyf, but it's another workaround to the Liliana. It's another card that he gets to cast that somewhere down the line he gets to cash in for a new card. And this is just a very effective way of playing against Liliana's plus power.
Vendilion Click will be removed from the Relic. Tarmogoyf's coming in for 3. Lossett will go down to 15. Maybe. Looks like we might have an Abrupt Decay here. Yep, gonna go after the top.
Well, the reason that Gerard's doing this is if Joe wants to put the top on top and draw a card, suddenly Liliana's plus power gets something out of his hand.
Oh, it works.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it looks weird.
Yeah.
But if he's going to plus the Liliana anyway, he either can discard the Abrupt Decay or get something out of Joe.
And Joe knows the top card of his deck, which is a Sensei's Divining Top.
Right. So this is not horrible for Gerard.
Yeah.
He's trying to make lemonade some lemons over here.
Yeah.
You know, Abrupt Decay was not the draw he wanted this turn.
And it's just, all right, it's dead. I know what I'm drawing.
Exactly. For Joe, if he does anything there, it basically just spends mana the next turn for him to reestablish Divining Top, so not a lot to be gained.
Liliano took up the 3, passed the turn back. Tops the draw here for Lossett.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are only 5 minutes
There
remaining
is the
to
top.
sign up for today's Modern Premier IQ. Please come see
Spin it to win it.
Once again,
Vents are in
5
there.
minutes remaining to sign up for today's Modern 5K Premier IQ.
Venture just causes so many problems. Really, really good card in Joe's deck.
Yeah, you're seeing a bunch of cards that individually cost Joe very little to put in this deck that have other utility that, when the pieces lock together, create some very challenging spots for Gerard to get out of. Vendilion Click plus Caracas caused Gerard all sorts of problems last game, and it looks like Venser plus Caracas is going to cause Gerard all sorts of problems this game.
Lossett taking 4 there from the attack. He's down to 10. Scavenging moves after combat from Fabiano. Another annoying threat. Leon gonna take up. Lossett's gonna draw a card. This might be with the Liliana on the stack.
My goodness.
Yep. He'll cast Venser.
So this is in response to the Liana trigger. So
Yep.
whatever Joe bounces, Gerard is going to have to discard because Gerard is empty-handed.
We'll see if it's Tarmogoyf, if it's Ooze, or if it's actually Liliana itself. This is a beaten.
Yep.
So it'll be Liliana itself.
Keep in mind, with Venser plus Caracas, Joe essentially has 2 attackers checked
Yes.
because he can block one, return Venser to his hand with Caracas, replay it on the other attacker, and take no damage. So the 2 threats in play don't amount to very much when Joe has this combination of cards in play. It's unclear whether Gerard has Disfigure in his deck post-board. Abrupt Decay does not touch this setup. Gerard has no Wastelands in his deck. So he's in trouble.
Yes.
that's the short of it. It looks innocent enough what Joe has in play, but it's causing Gerard all sorts of headaches. And keep in mind that a lot of Gerard's creatures are no longer operational because they are legendary. His
Yep.
Tassigurs, his own Vendilion Clicks, they don't do very much in the face of Joe's Caracas.
Joe gonna replay the top and spin it.
So it looks like Joe does not have a lot going on, but in the context of the matchup and what Gerard has in play, it's a lot.
Yeah. He's doing just fine. In this situation, I'd be surprised if there's any good attacks. Here comes the Ooze. Looks like Lossett's happy taking 2. We'll go to 8. Fabiano's going to activate Scavenging Ooze. Eat the Red Elemental Blast. Eat the Sensei's Divine Top. Tarmogoyf's going to slow down a little bit. Joe would like to Caracas his Venser. That's good. Because I think we're going to see a Terminus here in a moment. Just wants to make sure everything's kosher on top of the deck. He'll Relic. There's Terminus. There go the creatures. Joe's certainly in control now.
Yeah.
He'll pass the turn back over to Fabiano.
Again, it does not look like much is going on, but Joe has established a variety of soft locks here.
Yep. A Relic activation.
And Joe doing this main phase because he knows that Gerard plays with Delve cards. He doesn't want Gerard to just rip dig through time and be able to cast it. And so he is main phasing the Relic. He's being very aggressive about it. He doesn't want to cash it in just yet because something specific may warrant it. And with Gerard playing so much discard, a card that Joe can leave in play and then cash in to draw a card at instant speed is valuable for him. But I like the way that Joe is navigating this Relic.
We get to see the cute play with top, one of my favorites. Draw a card with top, in response, Venser the top, so you have to put top on top of your deck.
Yeah, Divining Top is an awkwardly worded card insofar as, unlike most cards, it doesn't care on resolution whether or not it was put on top of the deck
Yeah.
for the card drawing to take place. So you can do all these things like activate Divining Top, use Venser, return to my hand, draw a card. Or we saw it yesterday with Goblin Welder and cards in the graveyard. Activate Divining Top in response, weld it away, draw a card and get a card back. So Divining Top has these awkward interactions because it kind of functions differently than a lot of cards do.
It's a truly adorable play.
Yeah.
One of Joe's favorites. I've seen him do it before, and I imagine at some point in time we'll see him do it again. Deathrite Shaman is here. Joe with a counter spell in hand. He'll untap. Doesn't care about the Shaman all that much as he's getting to work here. Not a lot of graveyard left. Here comes Venser. Tie game.
Yep.
8-8.
Still anyone's game.
Fabiano will pass the turn back. Lossett's probably going to spin the top here in just a moment. A response here from Fabiano. Looks like Deathrite Shaman's going to try to go after something. Bunch of mana for a dig through time. Joe going to delve that away so the Deathrite Shaman can't get it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last.
So shields are temporarily down on Venser, but I think Joe suspects Gerard can't kill it anyway.
Yeah.
And even if Gerard does kill Venser, well, Joe is resolving dig through time and can finally gas back up with significant cards.
It's very safe to think that he can't kill Venser because truthfully, you think about it, how could he kill it?
Yeah, he would have to have left his disfigures in.
Yeah.
Which maybe happened, but it seems unlikely.
Some weirdo spell that will take care of it. Abrupt Decay can take care of the relic. Now Dig will resolve. So Joe will take a look at the top 7, of course, take 2 with him. Looks like there's a counter spell among those cards.
And for as long as this game has gone on, I think at this point you can deduce Joe has removed the counterbalances from his deck. He does not want to have the fight over Abrupt Decay, and Gerard's Abrupt Decays are pretty short on targets. I mean, he can get Vendilion Clicks and Snapcaster Mages, but those do things on the way in, so not the end of the world if those get killed. And Sensei's Divining Top is immune. Relic is essentially immune, even though Gerard was able to cash it in right there.
Yep. And those are exchanges that Joe's happy with if Abrupt Decay is killing cards like that. Doesn't care.
He does not want a game plan hubbed around counterbalance that's easy for Gerard to break up.
I think every time that Joe plays against a Sultai deck, that's the case.
Legacy Open competitors.
Looks like there's a top activation.
Oh, this was all in response to a top activation, and I think Joe was starting to untap, and our table judge said, hold on, there's still a top activation.
A lot of stuff happening there.
Yeah.
Judges, please find
The stack can get complicated.
Maybe it's time for a Jace. Yeah, looks like it is. Gonna start with the swords to take care of the Deathrite Shaman. In comes Venser. Maybe now it's time for Jace. Leaving up the mana to cast Counterspell and Caracas the Venser if necessary. He'll Brainstorm. 2 cards will go back here. But this is Joe Lossett in the driver's seat right here.
Yep. Having Gerard attacked from so many angles, and I love Joe's plan here against an Abrupt Decay deck, which is all my cheap permanents you either can't kill or they do something on the way in. And a lot of my game plan is built around permanents that cost 4 mana, like Venser, like Jason the Mind Sculptor, that Abrupt Decay does nothing against.
Joe gonna spin that top, Counterspell, Force of Will, Flooded Strand are the cards. Looks like he'll draw the Counterspell in for 2. Fabiano's gonna go down to 5. Joe with top in play, a Jace in play, Venser plus Caracas. Life is good here for the Miracle Mastermind with about a minute to go. Don't think it's possible he loses the game as he's gonna Fate Seal Fabiano. Misty Rainforest gonna stay on top. Pass that turn back.
I think I think Joe rather gets it done in time.
Yeah, I think so too. Fabiano, take a look at the top card. Just wanted to see what he Fate Sealed.
Right, because Gerard going from 5 to 4 is significant and it cuts a turn off, so.
Yep.
But Gerard probably can't kill the Venser. Any blocker he draws doesn't really work because Joe can simply Caracas the Venser and bounce it. Or use Jace.
Here's a Jace from Fabiano. There's a Pyroblast. Here's a Blue Blast. Blue Blast resolves so that Joe can Snapcaster Mage back the Pyroblast.
Uncounterable via Counter of Souls.
Absolutely. And Fabiano's going to extend the hand. Joe Lossett is going to defeat Gerard Fabiano 2-0. Miracles will take down Sultai Control, and that is a display on how to play Miracles, my friends.
And a real display of the vulnerability of Gerard's deck to Sensei's Divining Top. He's got his own. He's not necessarily doomed in a game where it shows up on the other side, but with Joe's experience with the deck, with his game plan against Abrupt Decay style decks, if it shows up at all, I think Gerard's in a lot of trouble.